Nobody expected Nancy Pelosi's sharpest insult to become the very mistake that would give Judge Judy the perfect opening to dismantle her in front of the entire courtroom. Before watching this powerful courtroom case review, powerful, make sure you subscribe to the channel first, comment below where you're watching this video from, and subscribe for more intense stories like this. Now let's begin. Nobody sitting in that courtroom had any idea what was about to unfold. Powerful. The cameras had arrived expecting a normal legal hearing, the kind Judge Judy had handled countless times before. Direct, fast, sharp, and finished before anyone could waste the court's time. But the moment Nancy Pelosi entered, powerful, the atmosphere changed. She did not come in looking like a witness. She did not move like someone quietly observing from the side. She walked in like a storm had entered the room, wearing an expensive designer suit, her chin lifted high, powerful, and a smirk on her face sharp enough to cut glass. Judge Judy had been asking her questions with her usual calm control. The room was quiet. The tension was still building. Then Pelosi leaned forward slightly, powerful, lifted her hand as if she were about to silence a child, and said the 7 words that would set the entire country on fire. "You're uneducated, Judge. Everyone knows it." The words tore through the courtroom like flying shrapnel. For 1 second, powerful. Everything stopped. The bailiff blinked. The audience gasped. Even the clock on the wall seemed to freeze. But Judge Judy did not move. She did not flinch. She did not take a breath loud enough for anyone to hear. She only stared. Powerful. The same look that had frozen attorneys, CEOs, fraudsters, and arrogant defendants for decades. But this silence was not empty. It felt loaded, like behind her eyes. Powerful. 100 pages of evidence were already turning into a weapon. Pelosi smirked again, clearly believing she had taken control of the room. She had no idea she had just damaged herself. Powerful, because what Pelosi did not know, what nobody in that courtroom knew, was that Judge Judy had been waiting for exactly this kind of arrogance. Maybe not Pelosi specifically, but someone like her. Powerful. Someone confident enough to believe Judy's decades on the bench meant nothing. Someone foolish enough to mistake her calm for weakness. Someone bold enough to insult her intelligence in open court and expect no response. Powerful. What Judge Judy would do in the next 47 seconds would become one of the most replayed courtroom moments in American history. But before that response came, the audience noticed something unforgettable. Judge Judy smiled, only slightly. Powerful. It was barely there, a faint, knowing smile that did not look offended. It did not look hurt. It looked amused. It looked prepared. And as that small smile crossed her face, Pelosi's expression shifted for just a fraction of a second. Powerful. She did not understand why the room suddenly felt colder, heavier, charged like the air before lightning breaks across the sky. Powerful. But viewers watching later would say they saw it too. The exact instant Nancy Pelosi realized she may have made the biggest mistake of her career, because Judge Judy was not about to defend herself emotionally. Powerful. She was about to redefine herself completely, and in doing so, she would expose something Pelosi had spent years trying to keep away from public view. When that hidden truth finally came out, Pelosi would be left with nothing to say. Powerful. This was no longer only a courtroom hearing. It had become a battle over respect, reputation, and the quiet power of a woman the world had underestimated for far too long. The courtroom did not recover quickly from those words. Powerful. The air felt heavier, almost harder to breathe. Reporters who had arrived expecting an ordinary civil dispute now leaned forward in their seats, pens hovering above their notebooks. Powerful. Eyes moving between the two women like they were watching a slow trial happen in real time. Nancy Pelosi sat back, lips pressed into a satisfied line, as though she had just carved her name into stone. Judge Judy still had not moved. Powerful. Not her hands, not even the corner of her mouth, but that stillness was not weakness. It was pressure, silent, invisible pressure building beneath the surfaces like a fault line waiting to split open. Powerful. Pelosi thought silence meant surrender. Everyone else felt the opposite. The bailiff swallowed hard. He had worked beside Judge Judy for years. He had seen her take arrogance apart in less than a minute, and he could feel the shift. It was subtle, powerful, like the wind changing before a storm you cannot see yet, but somehow feel in your bones. Judge Judy slowly adjusted the papers in front of her, aligning their corners perfectly while keeping her eyes locked on Pelosi. Powerful. That tiny movement sent unease through the room. It was not the gesture of someone rattled. It was the gesture of someone in control. Pelosi broke the silence with a laugh that sounded too loud and too hollow. "What?" she said. Powerful. No witty comeback? No clever remark? I suppose education does have its limits. The audience stiffened. They knew that tone. Powerful. They had seen Judge Judy's courtroom turn from ordinary to dangerous the moment someone used that kind of tone with her. Still, Judy said nothing. She only tilted her head slightly. Powerful. Studying Pelosi the way a hawk studies something that has wandered too far from safety. Then something happened nobody expected. Judy leaned back just a little, enough to show she was not cornered. She was waiting as Judy leaned back. Powerful. A faint smile appeared on her lips. It was so slight that some people could have missed it, but those who saw it knew exactly what it meant. It was not the smile of someone wounded. It was the smile of someone preparing a blade. Powerful. Pelosi's smirk flickered. For the first time, a shadow of uncertainty moved behind her eyes. It disappeared almost instantly, but it was enough. The room had seen it. Nancy Pelosi had thrown her sharpest insult, and Judge Judy had not even blinked. Powerful. The tension pulled tighter. The silence was no longer awkward. It was unbearable. Reporters began writing faster, realizing they were watching a moment that would not disappear. The bailiff straightened as if bracing for impact. Powerful. A woman in the second row clasped her hands together and whispered something that sounded almost like a prayer. Outside the courtroom, the story was already moving. Phones buzzed quietly in purses and pockets. Updates were spreading online. Powerful. Clips of Pelosi's insult had already begun circulating with captions like "Pelosi calls Judge Judy uneducated," and the insult heard across America. Viewers watching the live stream told one another that Judy looked calm, powerful, but her calmness was frightening. Anyone who had watched her for years knew what it meant. Judge Judy was loading her ammunition. Pelosi misread the silence again. "I suppose some of us," she said lightly, "rise through merit." Powerful, and others simply rise through noise. Her voice sounded smooth, but there was a slight tremble at the edge of it. Most people might not have noticed. Judy did. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction, not with anger, but with calculation. Powerful. It was the look of a chess master studying the board one move before checkmate. In that tiny movement, the power in the room shifted. Pelosi had entered looking larger than everyone else. Now somehow she seemed smaller. Powerful. The audience leaned forward without realizing it, pulled into Judy's gravity. It was not what Judy said that held them. It was what she had not said yet. The words hanging in the air felt heavier than any spoken verdict. "You think I'm uneducated." Powerful. "You have no idea what I know about you." That unspoken promise suspended above the room like a sword held by a thread. Everyone felt that when Judy finally let it fall, it would not only cut through Pelosi's insult. Powerful. It would cut through her entire public image, but Judy did not strike immediately. She let the weight build. That was her brilliance. She never fought from anger. She fought from patience, precision. Powerful. And the certainty that truth would eventually win. Pelosi crossed her legs and began fidgeting with her pen, trying to make the movement look casual. It did not. The smirk that had looked victorious now looked defensive. Powerful. Like a mask beginning to crack, Judy finally lowered her eyes to the papers in front of her, reading them slowly, even though everyone sensed she already knew exactly what they contained. This was not about finding evidence, it was about timing. Powerful. No one in the room knew what Judy was about to say, but everyone understood it would be devastating. For a long moment, Judge Judy kept her eyes on the papers. The pens had stopped scratching. Even the air conditioning seemed too loud. Powerful. It felt as if the entire courtroom was holding its breath, waiting for her response to an insult instead of a legal ruling. Then Judy placed her pen gently across the top page, folded her hands, and looked directly at Nancy Pelosi. Powerful. The room seemed to grow colder. When Judy finally spoke, her voice was almost too calm. "Uneducated," she repeated softly, as if testing the weight of the word. "That is an interesting accusation coming from you." The reaction was immediate. Powerful. A ripple passed through the audience. Pelosi blinked, her lips parting slightly, as though she had not expected Judy to answer at all, at least not like that. But Judy did not give her time to respond. "You see, Congresswoman," Judy continued, powerful, her tone sharpening just enough to cut the silence. "Education is not only a degree on a wall or a title people repeat until they believe it. Education is knowing the difference between truth and performance." Powerful. It is recognizing when power has blinded someone so completely that they can no longer tell the two apart. Pelosi's smirk tried to return for half a second, but this time it looked brittle. She crossed her arms, trying to appear confident, powerful. Though the gesture looked more like a shield, Judy noticed, everyone noticed. "I have spent 55 years in the law," Judy said evenly. 27 of those years behind this bench, listening to more lies, arrogance, powerful and self-delusion than could ever fit into every speech you have given. Her eyes did not blink, and I have never confused arrogance with intelligence. Till today. The words hit the courtroom like a silent gavel. Pelosi opened her mouth. Powerful. But Judy's voice rose just enough to move hers without effort. "Do you know the difference between being educated and merely being powerful, Congresswoman? Educated people use truth to build. Powerful. The merely powerful use lies to protect themselves from it. You have built walls out of lies for years, believing they made you untouchable. They do not." For the first time, Pelosi hesitated. It was brief, almost nothing, but the cameras caught it. Powerful. Judy saw it too. "I do not need to raise my voice," Judy said quietly, "because truth does the shouting for me." The room went silent again. It was not her volume that stunned everyone. It was the precision. Judy was not shouting. Powerful. She was peeling away Pelosi's armor one thin layer at a time. Pelosi tried to laugh. "Oh, please," she said, waving her hand. "This is a courtroom, not a stage. Save the dramatics," but her voice cracked slightly on the final word. Powerful. Judy did not blink. "This is not a stage, but you have treated your entire career like one, haven't you? Every scandal deflected with a smile, every failure dressed up as strategy, every truth buried under applause. Powerful." Pelosi's hand froze near her jit, then slowly every attempt at composure now looked like fear. Judy let the silence stretch for one more long second, then she leaned closer, her voice colder now. "You called me uneducated. Powerful. But what terrifies you most is that I do not need to belong to your world to dismantle it. I do not need your approval, and I do not need your permission." The words struck the courtroom like a wave. Powerful. Reporters froze with their fingers above their keyboards. The audience did not move. It was not only what Judy had said, it was the way she said it. Quiet, controlled, powerful, and carrying a kind of authority that did not ask to be recognized because it already owned the room. Pelosi's face went still, not calm, still. Powerful. The way someone goes still when they finally understand the danger is no longer circling from a distance. It is closing in. "You mistook silence for weakness," Judy said. "But silence is only the moment before truth decides to speak." Powerful. Her eyes narrowed slightly, sharp as steel. "And I promise you, Congresswoman, truth is about to speak." The courtroom felt as if it shifted beneath everyone's feet. A charge moved through the room, making every person sit straighter. Powerful. Judy slowly lifted her posture, reclaiming every inch of the bench with the calm authority of someone returning to a throne. Pelosi's fingers tightened around her pen. It was the only movement she seemed able to make. Judy did not look away. Powerful. "You came in here thinking you could damage my name in front of the country," she said. "But the only reputation leaving this room damaged will be yours." Then Judy stopped. The trap had been set. The audience did not know it yet. Powerful. But they had just watched the first crack appear in Pelosi's armor. Judge Judy had not given her a warning. She had started a countdown, and only Judy knew it was already running. Then Judy leaned forward, placing her elbows lightly on the bench. Powerful. The entire room seemed to lean with her. Judy said softly. "Then let's educate." Her voice sharpened like a blade leaving its sheath. "In 1965, I graduated from American University. In 1967, powerful. I earned my law degree from New York Law School. I passed the bar on my first attempt. I served as a family court judge in New York City, presided over more than 20,000 cases, and spent years being trusted with children's lives, families' futures. Powerful. And the enforcement of justice longer than you have been in Congress." The words came quickly now, but every one of them landed cleanly. "And while you were giving speeches about values," Judy continued, "powerful. I was upholding them in rooms where nobody clapped, nobody cheered, and the only sound louder than crying children was the silence after a verdict. That is where education lives, Congresswoman. Not on stages, not in sound bites, in duty. Powerful." Pelosi's smirk was gone, her jaw tightened, her eyes moved toward the audience, searching for support, but no one gave her any. No one moved. No one interrupted. Judy still did not blink. "And if you want to compare records," she said. Powerful. Lowering her voice until it was almost a whisper, "I have never had to beg for resp. I earned it. You have spent decades borrowing it from fear." A stunned hush moved through the courtroom. Pelosi opened her mouth, but no words came. Powerful. That was when Judy delivered the line that would echo across the country. Power may silence people, Congresswoman, but education teaches them how to speak again. For 5 full seconds, nothing happened, no cough, no breath. Powerful. No pen scratching against paper, only silence, raw and absolute by the sound of Pelosi, setting her pen down with trembling fingers. Judge Judy leaned back with the calm of someone who knew the moment had already become history. Powerful. Pelosi stared straight ahead, her face drained of color, lips pressed into the thin line of someone who understood she would never win the room back. The 47 seconds were over, and Nancy Pelosi, one of America's most seasoned speakers, powerful, could not speak. The silence did not simply break, it shattered. Reporters who had been writing non-stop now sat frozen, as if they were afraid that moving too soon would make them miss the echo of what they had just heard. Powerful. The bailiff slowly lowered his gaze almost with reverence. Even the camera operators looked wide-eyed, as though they had captured something they were never supposed to witness. Nancy Pelosi sat perfectly still, too still. Powerful. Her posture tried to suggest defiance, but her face told the truth. She had the glassy stare of someone trying not to blink, not to break, not to fall apart. Her hand clutched the edge of the table like the floor beneath her had suddenly disappeared. Powerful, and Judge Judy did not gloat. She did not smile, she simply turned one page of her notes, slowly and deliberately, as if Pelosi had been nothing more than a minor interruption in the day's proceedings. Powerful. That single gesture hit harder than another insult ever could. Whispers moved through the audience like wind passing through dry grass. Someone exhaled sharply as if they had been holding their breath since Judy's first sentence. Powerful. Another person silently mouthed the word, "Wow." The reporters finally moved again, but not to write. They were still staring because they knew they had not witnessed an argument, they had witnessed an erasure. Powerful. And everyone in that courtroom understood it. Power no longer belonged to Pelosi, it belonged entirely to Judge Judy. Outside the courtroom, the country had already begun choosing sides. Within minutes, powerful. Clips of Judy's words spread across every major platform. News anchors replayed the moment, sometimes in silence because the line needed no explanation. Comment sections filled with the same reaction again and again. Powerful. She had not just won the exchange, she had reminded the world who she was. Even some of Judy's strongest critics paused before responding. Pelosi had tried to make Judy look small, but the result had done the opposite. Powerful. It reminded people that Judge Judy's fame, ratings, or a television stage. It came from something older and harder to shake. A lifetime of refusing to bend in front of arrogance. Across social media, powerful. Hashtags began spreading fast. People repeated phrases like "educated with grace" and "Judge Judy was ready." They were not only celebrating a sharp comeback, they were celebrating what the moment represented for young law students. Powerful. It became a rallying cry for women who had spent years being underestimated. It felt like a personal victory for longtime viewers. It confirmed what they had always known. Judge Judy did not need to shout to dominate a room. Powerful. Pelosi had tried to reduce her to one insult. Judy had answered by becoming bigger than the insult itself. That was the difference between power that demands respect and legacy that already commands it. Back inside the courtroom, powerful. Judge Judy closed her folder. Soft sound moved through the room like quiet thunder. No gavel slammed, no voice rose, no dramatic exit followed. There was only the calm bravery of dignity from someone who had tried to take it and failed. Powerful. Nancy Pelosi still had not moved. She stared forward as if her mind was trying to rewind the last minute and find a place where she could undo it. But there was no place. That was the thing about Judy. Once she spoke, powerful, the record became permanent. The audience slowly stood, no one clapped. They did not need to, the silence itself felt like applause. Deep, heavy and undeniable. Even the reporters rose, not because they were required to, powerful, but because something about the moment made standing feel instinctive. Through it all, Judy remained still. Not triumphant, not proud, just steady, the same steady presence that had carried her through years of public pressure, courtroom storms, powerful, and attacks that would have broken weaker people. Her authority had never depended on performance. It came from permanence. When she finally stood, the room seemed to part for her, not from fear, but from respect. Powerful. That rare kind of respect that does not need to be demanded or explained. It simply arrives, quiet and overwhelming. Pelosi lowered her gaze. It was the first real movement she had made in minutes. and it said everything. Powerful. The woman who had entered the room like royalty was now leaving like a shadow, reduced by the weight of her own silence. Judy did not look at her as she passed. That may have been the final blow. Powerful. It was the silent reminder that once Judy had decided Pelosi was no longer worth her attention, in that courtroom the insult had failed and the person who delivered it had been dismissed without another word. Powerful. That was why the moment echoed louder than the insult itself. Pelosi had tried to reduce Judy with language. Judy had erased her with silence. Outside the courthouse, the steps were packed. Powerful. A crowd had gathered during the hearing as whispers spread that something historic was unfolding inside. People pressed against barricades, held up phones. Powerful. And waited for even a glimpse of the woman who had just reminded the country what real authority looks like. Then the doors opened. Judge Judy appeared small in stature but enormous in presence. Powerful. She walked down the courthouse steps without looking to either side. The crowd did not explode into cheers at first. Instead, it hushed, as if a sudden wind pulled every stray word out of the air. That silence was louder than shouting. Powerful. Then one voice spoke. Respect. Soon, dozens joined, then hundreds. The word rose behind her like a tide, steady and low, growing stronger as she walked forward. Respect, respect, respect. Powerful. Judy did not turn, she did not wave, she did not need to. She simply kept walking, head high, shoulders squared, carrying something far heavier than a folder or briefcase, a legacy that had just been defended without a single raised shout. Powerful. Across the countries, screens lit up with a clip. Headlines spread within the hour. Pelosi silenced. Judge Judy redefines power in 40 seconds. The comeback America can't stop watching online. Powerful. Many clips carried only 3 words. She ended her. But for the people who had followed Judge Judy for decades, the moment meant more than a takedown. It was not just the fall of Pelosi in that room, it was the restoration of Judy. Powerful. They saw a woman mocked, underestimated, and dismissed rise from her chair and remind the world that intellect does not need to shout, real strength does not need to flinch, and truth, when spoken at the right moment, can shake an entire room. Powerful. For countless young women watching, the moment became more than entertainment. It became proof that calmness could still win, that quiet confidence could still shake a room. Powerful. That a person did not need to roar to be heard if the truth behind their words was strong enough. Pelosi's insult would fade, Judy's response would not. In law schools, powerful. Professors began replaying the clip during lectures about courtroom presence and professional conduct. In offices, women watched it during breaks and whispered that this was how composure defeats disrespect. In homes across America, powerful. Mothers and daughters watched the moment together, understanding without needing to explain why it mattered. It was not only victory, it was vindication. Somewhere later, far away from the noise, Judge Judy likely sat at her kitchen table, powerful, poured herself a cup of tea and opened the newspaper as if nothing remarkable had happened. Because to her, this was not about celebration. It was simply what happens when truth finally remembers its voice. Powerful. Nancy Pelosi had tried to rewrite Judy's legacy with one insult. Judy answered with one moment and carved that legacy into stone. That is why the clash would not be remembered as only another courtroom confrontation. Powerful. It would be remembered as the day the world was reminded that some people do not need power to be powerful, they only need silence. And the right 47 seconds, the cameras had captured more than a comeback. They had captured a lesson. Powerful. Respect cannot be demanded by title, wealth, office, or status. It has to be earned through discipline, truth, and the strength to remain steady when someone tries to provoke you. Pelosi entered that room believing the insult would define Judge Judy. Powerful. Instead, it defined Pelosi. She thought calling Judy uneducated would her look superior. Powerful. But Judy turned that accusation into evidence of something deeper. The difference between a person who borrows power from position and a person who builds authority through a lifetime of duty. By the time Judy finished speaking, powerful. The courtroom understood that education was not the issue, character was. And in that comparison, Pelosi had lost before she ever realized the fight had begun. The beauty of Judy's response was that she never chased the insult. Powerful. She did not shout over it. She did not beg the room to respect her. She did not list her achievements out of insecurity. She placed them on the record, facts in evidence, and let the weight of them speak for itself. Powerful. That was what made it devastating. It was not anger, it was accuracy, it was not revenge, it was restorations. Judy restored the truth of who she was in front of an audience that had just watched someone try to reduce her. Powerful. She reminded everyone that real authority does not always come wrapped in political power. Sometimes it sits quietly behind a bench, waits for arrogance to reveal itself, and then answers with one clean sentence. Across the country, powerful. People replayed the clip not because they wanted to see Pelosi embarrassed, but because they wanted to feel that rare satisfaction of watching dignity defend itself without losing control. That is what made the moment last. Powerful. It spoke to every person who had ever been talked down to by someone with a bigger title, every woman who had been dismissed in a room where she had earned her seat, every professional who had stayed calm while someone mistook restraint for weakness. Powerful. Judge Judy showed them that silence is not surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is simply waiting for the right moment to end the argument. And when that moment came, Judy did not waste a word. Powerful. She allowed Pelosi's insult to expose its own emptiness. Then she answered with history, discipline, truth, and a record that could not be mocked away. The reaction outside the courthouse proved how deeply the moment connected. Powerful. People were not chanting because of politics. They were chanting because they had witnessed respect being reclaimed. They had seen a woman refuse to be diminished and do it without becoming chaotic, cruel, or desperate. Powerful. That kind of power stays with people. It feels different from noise. It feels earned. Pelosi left the courthouse smaller than she entered it, not because Judy shouted her down, but because Judy did not need to. Powerful. Her silence after the response was the final judgment. No extra insult, no dramatic ending, no need to keep pressing. The point had been made. The room had understood. The country had seen it. And Pelosi had no answer. Powerful. That was the real ending of the confrontation, not the viral clips, not the chants outside. Powerful. The real ending was the moment Pelosi realized there was nothing left for her to say that could undo what Judy had already placed on the record. A careless insult had met a lifetime of earned authority, and the insult lost. Powerful. Judge Judy's legacy did not survive that day because she defended it loudly. It survived because she carried it quietly, then revealed its full weight at exactly the right second. That was why the moment became history. Powerful. It was not about destroying someone for entertainment. It was about showing that disrespect, when answered with truth, can collapse under its own arrogance. And that is the lesson people kept returning to. Real respect does not need to scream. Powerful. Real education does not need to boast. Real power does not need permission. Judge Judy proved all of that in 47 seconds. If this moment reminded you why real respect still matters, powerful, and comment power and silence to stand with Judge Judy and keep her legacy alive.